So Recovery Church, we have 100 churches nationwide. The website is recovery.church. The goal in Recovery Church is to put one in every city in America. And I would describe Recovery Church, it's the old school AA, where Jesus was involved in the rooms and the Bible was brought out. And it's more of a church setting. It's a bridge from the rooms to the church. There was a scripture in the Bible, and it's Romans 12:2. It says, "Be ye not conformed to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. Then you can test and prove God's will, his good and pleasing perfect will." That scripture stuck as the cornerstone in the beginning of my recovery. And I decided to challenge that scripture.
Everybody, welcome to Vibe Revive, and today's guest is Chuck McConnell.
Hey guys.
They make music, and he's just has an interesting story, which is always the case of my guests that I like to have. He's quite passionate about his story and his pathway forward, and that's why he's here today. So everybody, welcome, Chuck. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, man.
I don't know where to start other than I think folks that don't know you and you're here.
Sure.
If you don't mind, I'm sure we got him on his Facebook Live. I'm sure those folks might know your story, but my listeners won't.
Yeah.
So he has a very interesting story. If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just kind of start from the beginning. I'll try not to keep it long. I have a very long story. So I'm a recovered addict. I don't speak addiction over myself anymore. I'm a Christian man who was an atheist once. I'm a minister in the Recovery Church movement. I'm a full-time student. Again, like you said, I'm a musician. I started using drugs at an early age. I was born into a bad situation. I had a stepfather who was a biker who would give us alcohol, a mom who would feed us benzodiazepines, marijuana, cousins who would do meth. I was on psych meds from the age 6. I was also on amphetamines, Ritalin, because they thought I had ADHD, but it was really like trauma responses. And I was in a cycle of addiction for 43 years of my life, with very little time in between, clean time in between, runs again. So yeah, I mean, I've grown up a lifelong addict, grew up on the streets, and I spiraled down about 4 years ago, and I finally hit rock bottom on a church step in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I wound up overdosing on drugs, man. And that was when I found my moment of clarity, I guess, so to speak. I want to kind of leave it open for questions, because if I start telling my story, I could sit here for an hour and a half and not even get halfway through it. So
you hit some low points, absolutely, but I guess you hadn't hit quite rock bottom.
Absolutely.
It wasn't until that moment 4 years ago that you.
Sure, absolutely.
You feel like that was the turning point, that you finally felt like either I'm gonna start living or I'm gonna just call it quits.
So yeah, and it almost called it quits for me. Like I said, when I was laying on that church step, I remember I like, so most of my life, like I said, I was abused by my stepfather. I was raped at 11 years old, and I went into rehab. I had been severely abused the night before I was raped. I went home, told him I was raped. He abused me again. And at that point, a doctor had come in and examined me, seen all the bruises, the broken bones, ran a blood test on me, found methamphetamines, cocaine, benzodiazepines, all the prescription drugs, alcohol, marijuana. And he looked at my mom and he said, I've never seen an adult with as many drugs in his system as this kid has in it. And I've never seen such severe abuse. This kid's been raped, he's been beaten. And if you walk out of here with him today, I'm gonna send the police right behind you. So at 11 years old, I entered my first rehab. To say that, the story wouldn't be complete if I didn't tell you, throughout my childhood years, my mom would send us to church, and I would go to these churches and I would hear, people talking about God and how Jesus loves the little children. And, they would sing this song, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. And I remember singing that song, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, not me, because I'd hear about this Jesus who was, the protector of children. And I would be waiting for him to show up at my house to save me from some of the abuse that I went through. But because he never did growing up, I started to think of Jesus just like I did any other alcoholic, drug addict man. He was just another man. And then, as I got older, I started to contest religion. And I actually started digging into the Bible just to simply prove that Jesus wasn't real, that God wasn't real. Yeah. They say any atheist is going to be a biblical scholar. I don't know that I'm a scholar, but I learned enough to start to validate a point that, a lot of people say Jesus is like a spaghetti monster, making fun of it. And I started to ride with that narrative. And so I spent most of my life rejecting the God. There was a time in my life where I moved toward the pagan side of religion, started believing in like pantheism, the universe is God and the creator, but it's actually the creation. And I spent my life mad at God and Jesus and whoever, at that point, if there was a creator, I didn't like him either because I was handed a life that I couldn't believe. The most peculiar thing about being born into a life like that, though, is that when you are raised in something like that, you don't know that anything different exists. So, you're coming up and abuse becomes the norm. Stepping over ashtrays and beer cans when you wake up at 6 and 7 years old doesn't seem unusual to you. Opening the refrigerator with no food but loaded with beer doesn't seem unusual. Eating macaroni and cheese 6 days a week with ketchup on it, sometimes to change the flavor, just seems normal. It's what you know. Until you get a little older and you see somebody else at the park with their parents and with their mom and dad, which I never had. I had a mom, but you start seeing a little bit of normal and you're like, what is that? And you start to get a little hope, and then you move back into your life and that hope gets crushed again. So back to that Jesus thing and that God thing, I was always mad and angry. And there was a time where my mom had sent me to church, and on Sundays I would come home and my mom would take my little brother and go grocery shopping while I would come home to my stepdad. And when I would come home from the church, he would take me out in the barn alone and would abuse me. He'd abuse me, beat me up, and then give me alcohol to make me feel better. And I was getting off the church bus one day and I told the youth pastor, I was like, please don't make me go in. Please. I was 8 years old and he was like, you got to go in. This is your house. And I was like, he's going to hurt me. And he said, get off the bus. And he bowed his head and drove off. And I remember going home that day and Eric beat me so bad that when he was done, he pulled out his gun and he said, if you ever tell your mom or anybody, I'll kill you all. So that was kind of the life that I lived. That was kind of what pushed me away from God, if that makes any sense.
Right. So your mom didn't go with you. She sent you on the bus to come by and pick you up.
Yeah. Well, we would get off the church bus. My little brother would get in the car with my mom. They'd go to Safeway. Back in the day, we had Safeway. I know you probably remember Safeway and all that.
Yeah, there's Safeways.
Yeah. And I would be stuck with Eric. She'd get one kid and he'd get the other. And she would always take Johnny with her, my little brother.
Yeah.
It wasn't that my mom didn't take on a lot of abuse either. The story's long. I told it last night. It took me an hour and a half to tell it.
This was your normal.
It was my norm.
You knew when you was coming back from church that you had a beating waiting for you.
Absolutely. So,
did you go to school too?
I did. And I'll tell you what.
How did you manage school with all of this going on?
So here's the thing about what he was doing to me at school. I became somebody who was very violent at school. And because of how bad that he beat me, I would get in fights, and the kids at school, when they would beat on me, it seemed like nothing, compared to what I was getting at home. So I became the tough kid at school. I was the sixth grader that would fight the eighth graders and win because I would keep getting up, and they're like, why does this boy keep getting up? Because it was nothing to me. I was always in the principal's office, and I was always getting suspended. I failed the sixth grade. I failed the seventh grade, and I wouldn't have, and I moved to Dallas after that, and I wouldn't have passed the 8th grade, but they got tired of me smoking weed and coming to class, so they passed me on to high school. But yeah, school was tough. It was tough, and I don't know how I wound up being as smart as I am today because I don't remember ever doing an assignment or studying in school. But today I'm in college. I've got a 3.89 GPA I've maintained for 4 years. I'm working on a bachelor's degree. So I don't know.
What's your degree going to be in?
It's in humanities. Of course, you know, when people are hurting, they want to go back out into the world and help, you know. I'm focused on addiction studies. That's my focus, my bachelor's. I'll try to move to FAU and get my master's in social work, my MSW, and go on to be an LCSW, or I may even go to Nova Southern and try to get my PsyD, my doctorate in psychology. So I haven't decided yet. It always seems to change, but you know, everything I do though today is to help people escape the lifestyle I was in. So
right. What would be your message to somebody that's maybe experiencing that today?
I'm glad you asked that question. And this is going to be hard for people to hear, but the man who abused me, I was able to forgive him. You have to forgive the people that hurt you in order to break free of the lifestyle, and in order for people to forgive you. And I was able to do that because there was a 2-year period right after I got out of rehab where he quit drinking and quit doing drugs, and I got to see who he really was. You know, for 7 years, all I seen was a monster. For 7 years, you know, because he was beating on my mom, beating on me, he'd even beat on my brother, but not as much as me. But, you know, my mom would give me drugs, and she would take me to doctors to get me codeine syrup to deal with she would have to switch doctors too, because back then we didn't have the internet and stuff. You know, so they couldn't keep up with where they were writing the prescriptions. So she would take me to different doctors and get these different prescriptions for codeine syrup. So, but anyway, he got clean for 2 years, and I got to see who he really was without the alcohol, without the drugs. And he actually wound up being a really, really good man. And because I got to see who he was, and it took many years, as I got older and I seen what I did, I was able to look at him through a different lens and realize there was a different person inside of him. But I would almost call drugs and alcohol demonic possession if I'm going to look at it from a realistic standpoint, because it literally takes over your personality, hijacks your personality, hijacks your humanity, hijacks everything about you as a person, and you literally become someone and something else. And I experienced that. So it's about that forgiveness piece. And if you can look at people through the eyes of, you know, this is a broken human being. This is somebody who isn't even in existence while they're in their substance use. And you can try to look at them for who they really are, or you ever get a vision of who they really are, then maybe that forgiveness comes a little easier. But if you can't accomplish that part right there, you're going to live with that brokenness inside of you. And it's only going to destroy you, not the person you're mad at.
Well, right, because they don't even know it.
Yeah. And even if they do, he died he was dead when I forgave him. So it didn't matter whether he knew it or not. It literally, like you said, but it's not them. You know, they don't know it. If they're alive, they don't know it.
Right.
It's got to be.
But it's gonna eat at you.
Of course,
because it's this anger that you just carry with you.
Of course, and it's an excuse. It's just another reason. I was abused. That's why I get high. You're giving yourself permission statements. And that's what I did all my life.
Justification.
I was mad at God. I'm going to use. I was mad at the girl who broke my heart. I'm going to get high. I was mad at my stepfather for abusing me. I'm going to get high. Now, the guy who raped me.
I'm mad at my boss.
Mad at my boss.
I mean, it goes
of
for
course.
Maybe somebody who's not in necessarily an abusive situation.
And it doesn't have to be. You could wake up with a flat tire if you're an addict, and you go outside and be like, oh, I can't go to work today. Oh, I'm flat tire. You know what? I'm just going to get high. I quit. Victim mentality. Victim mentality. You know, I spoke at a rehab last night, and every time I speak at a rehab, I tell them, I'm like, you know, we have to start looking at our past as boot camp. We have survived 100% of the things that the world has thrown at us, and we're still standing here today. And we have resilience, but some people don't want to see that.
Yeah. What about control? Did you feel like when you were using, did you feel out of control or in control, or did you have maybe a misperception that you had control by using? I'm curious.
I think all of them, because of course, I knew my life was out of control. I knew I was getting nowhere. I knew I didn't have anything in life, not a pot to piss
But the
in.
reality that you were living, you felt by
Well,
using it gave you some control.
well,
'Cause
I was in control of my
you
life.
controlled that.
I was in control of making my life out of control. Does that make sense?
No.
At least if my life was being destroyed, it was being destroyed by me and not someone else. So I was in control of that. That was the little bit of control I had, but that's the broken mindset. And because I never was taught to be a man, I never was taught to be responsible. I was never taught about finances. So I never paid bills. I'd get apartments and stay in them for 3 months and never pay the rent. I would get my lights cut off. I'd go turn them on at the breaker box. Get my water cut off. I'd cut the lock off and turn it on until they were so tired of me, they'd send the sheriffs over to kick me out. And I'd just wind up, living off somebody else. It was a vicious cycle, man. Very dirty, vicious cycle. And I literally didn't pay a bill until I turned 49 years old. My life was pretty, literally 49 years old before I started paying bills. I'm 53 today. I pay all my bills today.
And so why do you think that was?
There's only one reason, and I'm gonna say it. And if you don't believe what I believe, I didn't either. But when I gave my life to Christ, everything in me changed. There was a scripture in the Bible, and it's Romans 12:2. It says, "Be ye not conformed to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. Then you can test and prove God's will, His good and pleasing perfect will." That scripture stuck as the cornerstone in the beginning of my recovery. And I decided to challenge that scripture. I'd already challenged every other scripture to disprove God. And I said, okay, well, if this is true, and I dig in the Bible and I start doing what Christ tells me to do, and this scripture is true, then I'm going to test and prove God's will, or I'm going to test and disprove it. And I leaned on that. And I gave my life to Christ reluctantly. I decided to start reading the Bible. I went to ministry school and I started following scripture. And when I did that, I noticed a couple of things. One is I started having like-minded people come around me. And these people they had a certain kind of freedom. And I started looking at life through a different scope. And I was like,
What kind of freedom?
So they had a freedom from the tragedy of their life, from resentments, from secrets, from toxic behaviors, freedoms that I never knew. I mean, I knew how to act toxic. I knew how to keep secrets. I had plenty of resentments. They also had a freedom from having to use to hide themselves from themselves. They were free to look in the mirror and see themselves for who they were. They finally had an identity, I guess, and that's what I wanted.
So so I had another person on, and he speaks about wearing a mask. Do you feel like you were wearing a mask during this time? Like you weren't really, I guess, is it Chuck?
Chuck, Charles is my real name. Chuck, Charles, my government name. Yeah, Chuck.
Okay. Because, I have a friend, and so I always called him Charles. And he's like, I know when you knew me by what you called me, because I went by Charles in elementary school. When I went to high school, I went from Charles to Chuck.
I know where people know me from when they call me Charles. It's usually from school. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. He said, when I come out,
or the government.
He goes, when I become an old man, I'll be Charlie.
Right.
Anyway, so do you feel like it's when you're using, that's a mask you're putting on, or?
So I would believe that about other people, but I was born into it. It wasn't something
all you knew.
Yeah, it wasn't something I turned into later in life. This was literally my given identity from my earliest memories in childhood.
Interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, some people, they grow up and maybe they develop some shame, or maybe they used later in their teenage years. But I was hooked on opiates at 6 and 7 years old. I was hooked on benzodiazepines by the time I was 8. I was drinking alcohol, smoking weed. Amphetamines were given to me by a doctor because I had trauma responses, which they misdiagnosed as ADHD. And then they gave me psych meds and antidepressants. So my brain was fried. I don't know that you could have identified me as anything except maybe meat pudding. You know what I mean? Because that's what my brain was.
I
You
mean,
know,
I know it's been some years, but what did you think about? Did you have dreams, aspirations,
I
or
thought
what?
about hiding in the closet and not having to go out in front of Eric because he would, every time I got around him, Eric was my stepdad, there was some abuse. It was either being cussed out, we was being made to go out in the yard. And when he said clean the yard, we had 13 acres. We had about 6 of it mowed. And the yard was spotless, but we would have to pick up twigs this big, you know. It was impossible. There was no way. But, you know, he would come out there and find something to hit on us about, you know. So I was thinking about hiding. And when I first started doing methamphetamines, I was 9 years old. The first time I shot methamphetamines, I was 9 years old. I had a cousin who put a needle in my arm, and then he would leave me methamphetamines that I would do throughout the week. I was really glad to have that because I didn't want to eat, and I didn't have to go out to the dinner table with Eric. Half the time he was so drunk he didn't know whether we were there or not. But if we showed up, the abuse started. You know, so my life was crazy, man. It was crazy.
And so you've only been this way for 4 years.
Going on 4 years. December 2nd will be 4 years. Yeah. And it's been a lot of transformation. I'll tell you what. So when we left my stepfather in Arkansas, we moved to Dallas, Texas, and my mom met another man his name was Vince. I'm sure he doesn't mind being on here. He gave me a lot of freedom because he knew what I had been through. Gave me a room that was twice the size of this room as my bedroom. I had my own entrance so I could come and go as I pleased. But all I knew how to do was do drugs, fight, and be a hellion. So I had the freedom to do that. And that's what catapulted my addiction. I was 14 at the time. When I was
So you
16,
had no guardrails.
no guardrails. People would come over and stay all night at my house. There were weekends where I had 13 people in my bedroom all night. We're doing methamphetamines and whatever. And, you know, they'd wake up in the morning and be like, what are all these people doing here? And, you know, they just go back to doing what they're doing. He wasn't going to beat on me. I'd had enough of that, you know. I wound up running with gangs when I was 16 and 17 years old. We had a big crowd. We ran with this group called the Suicidals. But we were from South Garland. There were probably 60 of us. And then you had 200 Northside Dallas Suicidals we hung out with. We became a very dangerous group. And my life just kept spinning and spinning.
You feel like you was in that group because something they gave you? What did you get from being in that group?
Just people I could understand. I mean,
People
those
understood you.
Yeah, well, my stepfather was a biker, so he always had bikers out to our land, and they would build big bonfires, raise hell, shoot guns, you know, talk to us pretty nasty. I mean, and some of them, you know, were nice
But
to us.
I guess the abuse had stopped at that point.
When I moved to Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah, no more abuse there. The only abuse after that was the abuse I did to myself. You know, that's where the adult addict came out. I wound up moving out on my own when I was 15, and I haven't been home since. And I ran the streets for a long time. I learned I was able to sell drugs. I wouldn't pay bills, but I would sure, you know, get an apartment, turn it into a trap house. I wound up having my first child with a woman in Arkansas when I was 20 years old. My daughter's 31 now. She's got 5 grandkids. I wound up having a son when I was 28.
I mean, you have 5 grandkids, or she's got 5?
I've got 5 grandkids with her. She's got 5 kids.
Okay.
I've got 7 children total. So I had a son. He was born in 1999, and he was going to be adopted out. And I called. I didn't know that she was even pregnant. We had split up because of the drugs, and it was my second baby's mama. And she had took off to California, was going to adopt him out. And I found out, and I called her and I said, look, you're going to bring my son back. And she did. We got back together. We split up again because of the drugs. I wound up going down a spiral to where I wound up on the streets. I had all my skin burned off my side because this girl the next girl I got with ran me over with a truck. And I wound up getting a call from, I would say my father. He's not my father. I found that out around this time. But I wound up getting a call from my father's wife. They said, look, we know you're struggling. Come to Illinois. We'll help you. Went to Illinois, pieced my life back together for the first time the best I could. And I wound up going back down and seeing my son for the first time clean. When he was a kid, I would drive around with my knee on the steering wheel, smoking crack, pulling over, shooting dope, and that was how I spent my life around my son. Never once seen me clean. And in 2003, I went down, I picked him up, took him shopping. I was still California clean. I was still smoking a little weed, drink here and there. I was off the hard drugs, no meds.
California clean.
California clean, yeah, yeah. So, but I had straightened my life out. I was keeping a job. I had started paying a few bills there, and I wound up picking him up. I took him back to his mom. Her name is Mary, and she was like, "Look, I'm proud of you. You're doing good. You can come back and get him anytime you want." Well, in January, I got a phone call, and the phone call was, "Hey, look, your son's been in a car accident. He was 4.5 years old. If you ever want to see him again, you need to get down here to Texas. He's on life support, and they're going to pull the plug." Well,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Well, he was. I'd only seen him once with sober eyes, and I tried. I left. I was working for. Oh man, I forget where I was working. At that point in my life, I was working for Aldi Foods. I had managed a couple pizza shops. This point in my life, I started putting my life together. But I still was burying myself in work. I was hiding from myself. I didn't know what it meant to be clean. I just knew how to hide from myself. And when I got that call, something inside of me changed. And I tried to make it to Texas. It was Illinois. It was January the 25th. And an ice storm came, and I ran off the road. I had to have my car pulled out of the road. Got back home. I'm on the phone with my brother, and my brother says they're going to pull the plug. And I was like, "Please don't let them. Don't let him. I've only seen him once clean. Please don't let him." And they said, "There's nothing we can do." So I heard my brother on the phone, and he said, "He's passing." And I heard my son flatline. And at the time, I was married to another woman who I already had. She was pregnant with another child, my third child. We wound up going to the funeral, coming back, and we had that child. We had another one the next year, another one the next year. But I started slipping back into drugs, doing heroin, doing cocaine. Not all the time. I was working. Aldi had to let me go because I was showing up late. I wasn't opening their store on time. And they said, "Look, we understand your son died." Gave me severance. They paid for my insurance. They gave me unemployment. And I took off a little while, and I went back to work in a full service restaurant up in Champaign, Illinois, Bob Evans restaurant. I wound up burying myself like I was in addiction. I wound up burying myself in work, and the only thing I would focus on was work. And I had a wife at home who was a school teacher with 3 kids and pregnant, and they were flying me around because I was breaking records all over the place. Cracker Barrel wound up recruiting me, and I wound up breaking their records, and they were flying me around. And I'm sure my ex-wife, she was like, "Oh, this guy's just partying everywhere." And literally, I was just being promoted. And I came home one day and I said, "Look, I'd been clean for off of hard drugs shooting up for almost 8 years.
California clean.
California clean. Snort here and there, a little bit of heroin here and there, but no shooting up." So I've called myself clean. I was making a lot of money in restaurants. I was managing restaurants. And I came home, and they were going to make me a district manager in Cracker Barrel. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, we got to move to Morton, Illinois, and they're going to promote me." Well, again, she had 3 of my children and was pregnant with another one, 5 months pregnant. I had 2 more. One had died, and I had my oldest daughter, Caitlin. And she said, "Well, you can go to Morton. We're moving back to my mom and dad's." And she left. I haven't seen those 4 kids since the day she left.
Oh, wow.
That was 14 years ago. Was it 14 years ago? 2008. 15 years ago, right?
No.
17 years ago.
Yeah.
17 years. My goodness. They're all grown. They could come see me now, but they won't. And that's their mom painted a pretty bad picture. Maybe it was as bad as she painted it, you know. I wasn't as bad then though as I was growing up.
I mean, I'm going to speak to that. I've not been experienced that personally, but I feel like I think you got to be truthful and just stick with the facts.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you paint a super bad picture of your father, I don't know how healthy that is for those. Back to what we were talking about before. I don't know how healthy it is for the kids. True or not true, whatever she said. What are your thoughts on that? Because you're personally involved in this, but I'm sure. But 4 years into this, you have a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
I'm just curious for those mothers or even fathers that have someone that definitely didn't have their stuff together. Is it a good thing to paint this picture to children, or is it? I mean, I think you can't deny it, but at the same time,
So
they can like enhance the almost like maybe even hatred or anger towards that parent that's not part of their lives, instead of having more of a maybe a forgiveness mentality, because at the end, that's how this stuff continues, and not that those kids didn't have a reason to be angry with you. That's
So
probably true, but I'm just curious your thoughts on
let
that.
me intercede there. So with those kids, I was never a bad father. I worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week. When I was home, I spent time with them. I loved them kids. I was never high around them, never drunk around them. And when I did, like I said, it was very seldom. Not saying it was okay, but when I would go, it was because she was off, with the kids at her mom and dad's, and I was being left alone at home. So I would go to a friend's house and smoke some weed every once in a while. I would do some drugs, but she was just as guilty, if not more guilty, than I was. My first wife, because all I did was go to work and I handed her my check. Like I said, I never paid bills. She did. She did it with my money, but I worked really hard to get where I was. Now, was I the best husband? No, I didn't know how to be. I was just coming out of a horrible cycle. Did she understand that? No, she was 22. I was 30 something years old. I was more of a child than she was, though. But was I a bad father? No. No, I love those kids. I love those kids with my whole heart, and I still do. So it was bad that she painted that picture of me. She did a lot of things she didn't want them to find out about too. There's a lot of stories that they don't know. And I don't want to paint a bad picture of her, but I'm also not going to stand here and act like, I was the most horrible person in the world. Now, I had another child after her, my seventh child. And after she left me, I wound up moving back to Arkansas, where everything originally started, thinking I needed support. And I came to Arkansas, and I wound up stepping down with Cracker Barrel. I wound up going to the lowest manager on the totem pole, moving to Conway, Arkansas, and I wound up dating two waitresses at the same time. One of them got me under investigation, and the other one I married. But the one I married, she was really good to me, and I was really awful to her. And when we first started dating,
So did you get divorced from the other woman?
Because
Because you're a guy that doesn't pay his bills or do everything right.
right.
I'm just curious.
Which one? The wife?
Yeah, with the 4 children.
Yeah. So I didn't like get on and physically pay the bills. But
No,
when
I'm
my
talking
check-
about getting actually divorced.
Oh yeah, she wore me out. So I wound
So
up.
you divorced her?
She divorced me.
Oh, she divorced you.
Yeah, and I was
Oh,
making
see.
around 100,000 a year at the time, something like that. And she wound up. So there's a big story there. She divorced me. I moved back to Arkansas. I stepped down 2 positions. I was going to go to court, but when child support hit, they did it based on the income I was making and upper management. And it hit my check so hard that I was working 60 hours a week and was barely bringing home $150 a week. I had gotten custody of my oldest daughter at this time. I'd cleaned my act up a little bit, moved to Arkansas. We had a house. I had a truck payment. And when that happened, I couldn't pay anything. I couldn't even pay for gas. And there was one thing that I thought I could do to pay my bills, the same thing I grew up doing. So at that point, I went back to selling drugs. And that catapulted me back into the drug lifestyle. I met that girl the 2 waitresses I was dating. The one got me under investigation. I wound up quitting, and I wound up getting in a relationship with the other waitress. And I wound up starting to shoot up again with her. Not with her. She didn't do drugs. I wound up being with her, and I told her, I was like, look, you need to leave this relationship. I'm going to hurt you. You're going to get emotionally scarred from this, and she wouldn't leave. I moved in with her. I caused her to lose her apartment. she moved in with me at my uncle's house, and it just kept spinning down, and I wound up getting busted, selling methamphetamines, had guns, all kinds of stuff, and I wound up going to prison. She broke it off with me while I was in jail, but then we got back together, and she sat with me through prison. And when I got out of prison, I wound up marrying her, so she became my second wife. While we were married, I started to use again after being clean for a couple of years. I would do K2 and stuff like that. So again, California clean, smoke weed here and there, drink a little bit here and there, until it turned into a problem again, and I wound up doing dope again. And when I started doing dope, I got her pregnant with my seventh child. I started selling dope. I started making her pay all the bills, and I was keeping all my money, re-upping, running the streets at night, taking her car. I'd leave her at work sometimes. I took horrible advantage of her, and I was doing dope in the house. My daughter was born. I had a bunch of friends living in my garage. It really went south. The longer I went through addiction, the worse I got. But again, mind you, I never learned how to be any kind of a man. This was the only life I knew. And the one life that I did put together, it only destroyed me. And I went through a depressive state that just continued in a vicious cycle. Well, my daughter was about a year and a half old, and she comes walking across the living room one day, and she's holding her hand up, and there's an orange cap sticking out of her hand. And she said, "Mommy." And that orange cap was an IV needle used to shoot dope. And Rebecca looked at that needle, my ex-wife, and she looked at me, and I was like, I don't know where it came from. It wasn't mine. Somebody obvious. I make every excuse in the book. It probably, well, I didn't shoot dope in the house, but it probably, who knows? Regardless, it was the reason. And I woke up one morning and her and my daughter were gone, and I haven't seen that daughter since either. My other 4 daughters got adopted out to a man in Illinois. While I was in court, in felony court, I got paperwork saying I was either going to pay $32,000 or go to jail on a body attachment, or I could sign my rights over. Being high on methamphetamines, I signed my rights to those 4 girls over. Well, then this one, I didn't sign my rights over, but I'd caused so much trouble that I couldn't show up in court without going to jail. And she wound up adopting this one to her husband, her current husband. And so I haven't seen those 5 girls. I haven't seen my youngest in 7 years now. I wound up homeless after that, and I wound up going through all that stuff. And that's what led me to that church step.
Was that in Arkansas?
Yeah, 2018 is when she left. I wound up on the streets and bouncing from couch to couch, staying in places people would let me stay for 3 years. Until I was out in the middle of the winter, man. Ice, snow, 32 degrees, stealing clothes to sell them so I could get drugs, stealing food from Kroger, stealing food from Walmart. I would go and hit licks with people, get in their cars. We'd go steal trailers or whatever we could find, and sell them. And I'd spiraled down, and I was sitting on that church step, ugly crying. And I had come to the point where I was like, at that point, I looked up and I remember I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I've tried everything else. And there's this God who's let my life be like this, but everybody's telling me this is the answer. I tried everything else. The only thing I ain't ever tried, and I was really reluctant. And I looked at the sky and I said, God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you love me. And I don't know if you can help me, but I don't know how to stop. And I had 80 units rigged up of methamphetamines and in a needle. And I didn't stop. I put it in my arm, I shoved it in, and it wasn't long after that that the fentanyl OD'd me. What I thought was methamphetamines had been spiked with fentanyl, and I died on that church step from a fentanyl overdose. But I guess during that prayer, God heard me because a complete stranger found me, resuscitated me, put Narcan in me, and
how is it that he had a Narcan?
That was a miracle. He just happened to be walking by. How was it he found me behind the bushes? I don't know. I imagine it was the prayer. And when it come to, because he was resuscitating me, it cracked a rib, and I thought I was being robbed, and I thought I'd been hit and knocked out. And he was like, bro, you were turning blue. That was November the 30th. of 2021. 3 days later, I was on a plane to South Florida to a rehab, and
Is that what got you to Florida then?
what got me to Florida. Yeah, I had come once more earlier that year in 2021. I came down here and went through a program called Aon. Real soft, nice program. They had bio bed. They had a massage parlor. They had a chiropractor. They had meditation and yoga and all this stuff. Beautiful rehab. But when I hit the real world, they didn't have bio bed and yoga and 5-star chefs. I got out in the real world. It's tough, and I used it 3 days later. And I wound up getting stuck back in Arkansas for 6 months. So, I forgot that part. There's so much to the story, man. So much. I wound up coming to Florida once in March of 21, wound up leaving in June to go back and chase a relationship that broke me.
You think 90 days is typically enough time?
No, man.
Is that the typical period of time that when you're in that situation of going to rehab, is that typically what the professionals out there
maybe that's what they
stick
think.
you in for and think that that's what it's going to take?
Yeah, maybe. There's no time. It could be one day. It could be 10 years. The time is this, and I'm going to tell you, this is the truth. I know I've been in them all. I went to prison rehab. I went to state-sponsored rehab. I went to Fluffy rehab. I've been in a lot of rehabs.
Fluffy, that's with the
bio bed, 5-star
bio
chef,
bed.
ice cream machines, 24 hours. The only rehab that works is the
So
one.
it's trying to get you hooked on sugar instead of.
Well, the sugar helps with opiate cravings.
Oh, okay.
But the only kind of time that works is that time when you walk into any rehab and you say, I've had enough. It doesn't matter what rehab you go to. It doesn't matter the program. Sure, you can learn some tools. I learned a lot of tools, but rehab's not what keeps you clean. What's going to get you clean is when the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. When it hurts too bad to stay the way you are. Mm-hmm. And changing your life hurts a lot less. When you get that, and when you start to look at life and go, this is just not what I want my legacy to be.
Do you still struggle?
No, I used to struggle when I would work 12-step programs, go to AA and NA. But when I gave my life to Christ and asked him to take away the addiction, I quit having obsessions at around 8 months clean. When I had my spiritual awakening, June 27th of 2023, everything went away. That's when I knew the disease had been removed. I no longer had the disease of addiction. Mm-hmm. I think that, those programs, they keep you sick because they're not all the way in. AA and NA was created by the Oxford group. They were a group of Judeo-Christian men who went in the Bible and put the 12 steps together and developed the groups. Over the years, they've watered it down, taken Jesus Christ out, told people they can have their own gods they can't even explain, gods that has no character, these different gods that they say you can have. But the original God was Jesus Christ in the steps. And when I got to that part, and when I started following the Bible and I started, praying for my enemy, like Jesus said, loving my enemy, feeding people that I don't know. It says, when you fed them, you fed me. When you clothed them, you clothed me. When I started being a cheerful giver, when I started committing my life to service and helping people, when I started following the way Jesus lived and I applied that to my life, I quit thinking about me. And when I quit thinking about me, there was no need to think about using, because I didn't focus on my problems anymore. And not only that, when I started looking at my life through a victor lens rather than a victim lens, then I started looking at the things that were intended to destroy me. And now when a problem comes at me in life, I look at it and be like, oh, ain't you cute? Oh, nice little problem. Because the things that come at me today, they're small compared to what I've been through.
Kind of like the kids at school that fought you.
Yeah, small. Yeah, just like that. You know what I'm saying?
You've been through the big stuff already.
Been through the big stuff. Only thing that, and I've even died. I mean, not all the way where I haven't come back, but even death didn't take me out.
Do you remember that experience at all?
Do I remember being out? I remember fading out.
Fading out?
Yeah. I remember the heat hitting my nose. I remember, nodding back. I remember itching, but that's the last thing I remember besides waking up with my chest hurting, with feeling like somebody knocked the breath out of me. Feeling my face was freezing, my hands were freezing, I was freezing. You know, and then feeling the needle sticking out my arm where he hit me with Narcan, and just feeling off. I didn't feel right for about a month, man. You know.
So what happened after he resuscitated you?
Well, he left, and of course I started walking. I wound up. It took me 3.5 hours to walk 3/4 of a mile because of the drugs and the Narcan, the post-acute withdrawals, because you go into pause as soon as they hit you with Narcan. And I got to this person's house. This is a miracle. I got to this person's house that I would stay at from time to time, and I went in and I laid down. I bundled up. I got warmed up. And there was this girl named Erica McGill when I was 17 years old in Texas. So I'm 49 at this time. 17 years old. I dated her when I was 17. And I'm laying on the ground, on the floor, bundled up. And my Facebook rings and it says, Erica Roberts. And I'm like, Erica Roberts? Hello? And she's like, hey, Chuck. I was like, yeah. And she's like, it's Erica. I was like, okay, I don't know you. And she's like, it's Erica McGill. And I was like, McGill? Girl, I ain't seen you in 32 years. What's going on? And she said, well, I don't know. I've seen you on Facebook. I feel like you might be struggling. And I'm struggling. I'm having surgery on my leg. I need you to come sit with me while I go through surgery. I was like, I would, but I'm in Arkansas. I don't live in Texas no more. She said, yeah, I know. I live in Arkansas too. I'm about 4 hours away from you. I'll come get you. And I was like, huh? And so there's a story about this man who's drowning in the river, and he's praying to God. He's like, God, help me, I'm drowning. And a couple minutes later, a boat comes by, and the guy's like, come on, get in. And the guy goes, no, I'm waiting on God. He's going to save me. And the guy goes away, and you know, a couple minutes later, he's like, God, help me, I'm drowning. Another boat comes by, and the guy's like, come on, get in. He's, no, I'm waiting on God. So the guy gets to heaven, and he's like, God, why didn't you help me? And he's like, I sent you 2 boats. So when she asked me to come sit with her, I remembered that parable. And I was like, maybe this is my boat. It just died. So she drove 4 hours, came down and got me.
Well, you got 2 boats because you had the first guy walk by.
Yeah, there's the second one. Yeah. Yeah. So she came and got me. I went back with her. And I don't remember a lot of what was going on, the drugs, the meth, all that, just everything was a blur. But what I remember after her coming to get me was waking up and hearing beep, 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 you know, the machines in the hospital. And I'm waking up and I can smell the hospital smell. You know what that smells like. I hear the machines and everything's fuzzy. And I'm like, man, did I die again? And I'm sitting here and I start coming to and I look over and I see this girl in this bed. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, it's me, Erica, Chuck. And I'm like, huh. So I sit there and I stare at the floor for a little while. I felt like an hour and things started coming back. And I remember I looked at her and I said, Erica, if I stay here, I know I'm going to die. And she said, yeah, I know. Your phone was ringing earlier. Some lady called from Florida. So we got you a plane ticket. You're going to be getting on a plane here in a couple of hours. I'm going to AMA. She just had a rod put in her leg. She
just had what happened to her
leg?
leg?
A rod put in her leg.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she AMA'd the hospital. They let her back in.
What's AMA mean?
Against medical advice. She left against medical advice. So she left the hospital to take me to the airport, get me on a plane, and get me sent down here to West Palm Beach. And that's where my life started over, man. That miracle, man. I hadn't talked to her in 32 years. Out of the blue, she called me. And not only that, so there was another girl I dated when I was 14 years old. And I didn't have money to get into a halfway. And she called me up and she's like, look, I don't know how much money you need. Her name was Brandy. She's like, I don't know how much money you need. She goes, you tell me. And I was like, I don't know. And the next thing I know, I heard ding. I looked down and she sent me $400 on Cash App. Well, I got locked out of my Cash App. So when I got down here, I didn't have any money for a while. And then I was trying to get into a halfway. She sent me another 200. So when I got out of all these places, I had money to go in halfway. So all these people from when I was a child, reaching out to support me from out of nowhere, God just used some people to make it obvious that he was actually in the midst of it. I mean, there were plenty of people in the AA and NA rooms that could have helped me. I got rejected. I went to this meeting in Hot Springs at core or whatever, square peg round hole. I asked those people to put me up in a halfway. They left me on the streets. I remember leaving one of those meetings and I had 50 units of fentanyl rigged up saying, if I don't find a place to sleep tonight, I'm going to use this to kill myself. And, and those people are supposed to help you. And they played games in that place. Find you a meeting that doesn't play games. Find you people who are truly going to help you.
How do you do that?
So
how do you know?
Well, you just keep going to different meetings until you meet them. We have enough discernment in life to know whether people are good or bad, and it took going in Hot Springs. Unfortunately, there's only one place and it's all the same people. Not that there's not good people there, not that there's not people who had helped me at times, but there were a couple people there who could have helped me, and I almost killed myself one night because they didn't. I wasn't in my right mind. I wouldn't do that now, but when a drug addict gets into a bad place and needs help and they go ask for help, they're usually desperate. And sometimes, though, they're manipulating, man. So it's kind of hard. It's a bad game, man. I think I got a little off on a tangent there that I didn't know how to get out of that little wormhole I just dug. So
that's all right. So what happens, though, when, like, for somebody like myself, I mean, you said it already. You have to make your own choice. No one's going to be able to make it for you. So, you talked about going to that meeting and they didn't help you, and you had the needle ready to go.
So that was me playing a victim too, though, just so you know.
Right.
You either help me or else, No, nobody's coming to save you. Mm-hmm. Nobody's coming to save you. You can't count on people. You count on you and God. In this world. I'm married. I love my wife. My wife's beautiful. I trust her. I believe in her. But at the end of the day, she's a human being. I'm not saying she ever will cheat on me, ever will do me wrong. But at the end of the day, if she did, it wouldn't surprise me. The best person in the world could hurt you and maybe not even intend to. So when I look at life, I count on myself and God, and I place trust in people. And my wife's amazing. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with our relationship, but at the end of the day, man, that's it. Nobody's coming to save you. And you can either do what I did at that moment and play the victim, or you don't help me, I'm just going to kill. And I was actually thinking about offing myself. I was tired. It wasn't but a few days later.
That's a common language trigger, or like for people that hear it. I'm tired.
Tired. That's
what people will say.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Tired. And no matter how tired they are, they keep going, which lets you know that it's not really a choice. I didn't know how to stop. Some days I didn't know.
But they're saying they're tired, ready to just quit.
Quit one way or another.
Life.
Well, one way or another.
Quit the life.
This either going to get better or I'm going to make it better.
That's what they think.
They think, yeah. They think. And it's sad.
You've been there. You've been all the way up to that door.
So that wasn't the only time
and you're ready to walk through it.
Yeah. That wasn't the only time I OD'd either. It wasn't the only time I thought about killing myself. When my last wife left me, I put an exit bag on my head. That's when you take helium and you put it in the bag and you tie the bag around your head. Helium will keep you from exasperating without oxygen because your brain thinks it's oxygen. And I tried to kill myself then. I was there. I was tired. The drugs had me perverted. You know what I mean? Mentally perverted.
But you were on all kinds of drugs. What about alcohol? Can alcohol do that to you as well?
Of course. Alcohol is one of the worst drugs there is. People like to play alcohol down. So there's two drugs in this world that will kill you just from quitting them. Benzodiazepines and alcohol. And people want to play alcohol down. Alcohol is one of the worst. You have to go to detox if you're an alcoholic. You have to go to detox if you come off of pills. You should go to detox if you come off of opiates, but opiates they're not as bad. So alcohol and benzodiazepine, they attach themselves to your functioning body parts, the parts that make you live, your breath. Like diazepines, they'll stop you from breathing. Alcohol will too. They stop your nerve functions, everything else. You can literally die. People die from the post-acute withdrawal syndrome and the delirium tantrums of alcohol and benzodiazepines. So yeah, of course, 1,000%. I don't recommend anybody just trying to cold turkey opiates, benzos, or alcohol on their own. There's always help. There's always help. What's the number? 211, I think it is here in Florida.
I don't know.
There's free rehabs all over. There's health insurance marketplace that can help you get rehab. I'll tell you, for people who say they really want help, but then they'll just keep going because they say nobody's willing to help me. I'll tell you what I did one time. I had a drug charge that they kept a misdemeanor in Hot Springs in Garland County, Arkansas. And I didn't want to use, and I was out of jail for like 3 days. They let me out. They just said, okay, we're going to put him on probation, let him out, keep it a misdemeanor. I had people stop me, trying to get me to get high. A guy took me back to his house, told me he was clean. I met him in rehab. And we get close to his house, and he's like, wait, I got to go in and clean some stuff out. And I'm like, wait a minute, man, you got drugs in here? And he's like, yeah, man, it's my roommate's, not mine. I was like, nah, man, I'm good. And I walked around for like 2 days in the cold pouring rain. And I wound up walking back up in the courthouse where the judge was and said, look, you let me out 2 days ago and I don't know what to do. Will you put me back in jail? And he ordered me into rehab. So, you know, if a person wants to get clean, there's a way to do it. You got to be willing to go into action.
What kind of rehab did he order you into?
So they did state, but they did private pay too. It was a co-ed rehab. It was a good rehab. It was one of my favorite ones. I went there.
How many rehabs have you been in?
Like 12 or 13. Yeah. Quite a few. Rehab it's not going to get you clean. It's not rehab. The best rehab I went to was the one that I relapsed the quickest out of. The most expensive one I relapsed within 3 days.
3 days.
Yeah. And that's
after 90 days in the rehab and being off.
Yeah.
Clean for how many days were you clean?
3 days. Or
No.
90, no, probably almost. So
Like-
from March, April, May, June, 3 months. I'm right at 90 days.
So when you go in, you quit.
I quit, yeah. Yeah. And
So you're like 90 days, 93 days clean, and you're like, I'm done. I'm done being clean. I'm ready to go back.
well, I wasn't trying to go back and get high, but I went back to a girl that was toxic with me and who had kicked me out and went and cheated on me and stuff. And I went back to her. She had came and visited me. And I wound up AMA in a rehab, and they got put in another rehab in Boynton called Brighter Futures. And I hadn't got high. I didn't get high the time she was down here. But when she went back, I missed her and wanted to go back. And it was a very toxic relationship. And I wound up going back to her. And within 2 hours, she dropped me off at a McDonald's and went and seen some other guy. And my daughter and me wasn't talking at the time, but luckily she picked up the phone and she came and picked me up. And that night I said, well, I'm going to go back to rehab, but I got to be high to get in. No, you don't. But I made an excuse, and I wound up getting high and being stuck for 6 more months. You know, like I said, I came back in June, and I got high from June till December, and then I came back to Florida.
So that's interesting. I'm hearing something that's maybe different from what you've been talking about, but something I want to get your perspective on is you're going through these phases, seasons, whatever you want to call them, and just like that one you just talked about, where you could have maybe short-circuited it, but instead you went 6 months and struggled again for 6 more months.
I'm lucky that's all I went.
And you're lucky that's all you went. So I'm just curious, is there a switch you can turn on your brain that says, look, there's no need to go 6 months or a year or 18 months struggling. Let me just get it right. I mean,
So,
because this is so we're talking to you from an addict perspective, but I think it also happens to folks in a non-addictive situation where maybe they have a job loss and they go through a financial struggle and they go through this, and they're, I guess maybe to take some of the language you've used, they're playing the victim. You know, drugs aren't really part of it, but instead of, you know, I don't know how else to say it, but they go down this path, they're falling down this path when they're doing things that are not helping them.
yeah, counterproductive. of course.
Counterproductive when they could just like, hey, let's shortcut this and, you know, not do all of that crap and just start, you know, start today instead of, I guess, maybe another word, maybe procrastinating, making the better choices. But you're saying it's
So
There's
it's-
nothing logical with any of this, right?
So no, it doesn't have to be about drugs. It doesn't have to be about alcohol. I mean, it can. There's a lot of things. I mean, people get hooked on masturbation. People get porn and stuff like that. People get hooked on work. People get hooked on sports. People get hooked on their phones, man.
Toxic relationships.
Toxic relationships. Yeah, they're looking for a certain type. People get hooked on going out and spending money, shopping, and it's a programming. It's programming. And until we're able to say no matter what, I mean, that's what it came down to for me. When I got down here this time,
Because I think you get what I'm talking about, right?
of course I do.
Yeah.
And you have to fight the programming. You have to say no matter what, I don't care what I have to do. If I'm in this situation, so here's the thing. I came down here and I was walking 6.5 miles to a bus stop. When they wouldn't take me to the bus stop or wouldn't take me to work, there were days they wouldn't, and they didn't care. They didn't even acknowledge me, because the last rehab I went in, I was a scholarship. She scholarshiped me, wound up staying there 2 years. She took real good care of me. But because they did that, I gained some strength. I'm glad she did it. And when I got there were days the techs would take everybody. They had to go this way, and my job was this way. Well, couldn't make it on time. So I would look, and I'd be like, they're not going to take me today. So I'd set out 2.5 hours early and start walking toward the bus stop. And we're talking 110 degree heat. I would take a change of clothes, so when I got to work, I could bathe in the sink. I had 2 jobs, and I had to go to meetings. So I would walk to those bus stops, get those meetings, those 2 jobs. And there were days, my daughter just posted on Facebook the other day, because I got this new truck. She's like, I remember when you were walking in the rain to work, you were working 2 jobs, you were going to the gym early just to get a couple of minutes of sleep so you could go to your next job. Because no matter what, I was going to do what it took. And I saved up for an electric bicycle. I got the electric bicycle. I saved up. I wound up getting a motorcycle. I wound up getting an SUV next. I signed up for school. I was working 2 jobs, going to school, signed up for ministry school. And I looked at my addiction. I looked at what I was willing to do to destroy my life, all the work I put into that. I was like, well, I mean, I was tired then. What am I complaining about now? Everything I'm doing that makes me tired today is building me. So I put in the same work I did destroying my life into fixing my life. And today, man, I live in Loxahatchee. I got an in-ground pool in my backyard. We got a recording studio, a full gym. We got a TV studio. I got a 3-bedroom house that me and my wife live in on an 1.8 acres of land. I got 2 cars in my driveway that are mine. She's got her own car. I bought 2 motorcycles. I just sold a BMW. Like, literally, man. I mean, I've got a full music studio, and that doesn't even add up to what I really have, which is an identity today. I've got a degree, man. I help people. I go to rehabs. I'm a minister. I preach God's word. The things that have changed in my life, when I said, you know what, there's nothing going to stop me. I literally call it taking the stop button out. If I see a problem, I'm going to tackle it. And I still do it today. I took the stop button out, and I said, no matter what I have to do. I was getting up at 4:00 in the morning, going to UFIT gym, clocking in at 5, and working at UFIT until noon. I'd get off at noon. I would go eat, and then I'd go to a meeting, and then I'd go back to Applebee's or even shopping for a little bit, and I would work 4 p.m. till 12 a.m. I would get home by 1 or 2 o'clock and get up and go back to UFIT the next day. And then when I started going to school, I had to cut UFIT from 9 or 5 to 9, and then go to Applebee's at 4, and I had to go to school during those hours. But I was going to, I had 2 jobs going to school.
When you get graduated, are you already graduated?
Well, I graduated and got my first degree less than a year ago. I'm working on my bachelor's in applied science right now. I graduated ministry school a year ago. I've got my CCC now. I've got certifications. I worked as a therapist last year for the same rehab I came out of.
You think that helps with the people that are there?
Of course. Every person.
I don't know that I could relate for me to do it, because I haven't walked that path.
I don't. So my wife, she sponsors addicts, and she doesn't have to walk the path. What people need is love. People need love and understanding, and if you surround yourself with people like that, it's not always about knowing their path. You can identify their struggle. I'm sure you've had some hard times in your life. You ever lost anybody to death?
Sure.
So you know what it means to lose people. Have you ever, been broke or had a car accident or had your life destroyed, been in financial situations?
Yeah.
Sure, man. Everybody's rock bottom isn't the same. But
yeah, but never been like homeless and no
Not
place to
not
go,
every addict has.
having to sleep on a sofa, somebody else's sofa before.
Yeah. Well, I've had
That's
sponsors.
that's a different level.
Well, I've had people who helped me who never have either. I didn't need them to know what I've been through. I just need them to be willing to help me get out of it. And that's what's important. It's not you knowing what I've been through might make you even less qualified, because you might be like, suck it up, man. So what? I've been there too. Where somebody who hasn't is like, you know what? Let me help you. You shouldn't have to go through that no more. That's why my wife is great. My wife's never been there. She has a heart for it.
Right.
She hears my story and cries, man, every time she hears
Yeah.
it.
Well, but she's had her own struggles too.
She has, and we just went through cancer. I think, and she's beat it, and she's coming back from the doctor today to find out if anything else is wrong. What's great about that, and not so great, but great, is I told her, I was like, I think God gave you an illness so you could identify with me, so you would have a struggle too. And she was like, you know what, I think you're right. And we
You just have to find the good out of it.
Of course.
There's always good in it.
Of course, man. And he wants us to clean up our lifestyle. So because of her cancer, we eat grass-fed, grass-finished. We only eat cage or range-free, pasture-raised eggs and chickens and organic vegetables and no sugar and all this sprouted bread. Like, I didn't eat that way before, bro. I was McDonald's and Burger King, man. Come on. Give me a Dr. Pepper. I drank a 12-pack of Dr. Peppers a day. I drank filtered water from a reverse osmosis machine today. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, my stomach, I looked like I had a beach ball.
Yeah, you're close.
Well,
like me.
Today I benched 340 pounds 5 times. I'm
wow.
53 years old. And I can do more than most people in the gym that are even bigger than me. You know, we go to the gym 5 days a week.
340.
345 times. I think 380 is my PR.
Wow.
You know, I mean,
I think I'm at 225.
yeah, I work out with 225 today. I remember though being there.
Yeah.
I remember being there. I seated row.
When I started, I couldn't even do the 135.
Of course, man. And
I was just like, yeah. But then, I still warm up even just with the bar.
Yeah.
And
you're supposed to. You got to get the blood going.
Right.
Get your joints ready.
But yeah, 135 is probably like, I'm trying to push it a little bit further. But yeah, that's kind of like I like to get my reps in with that.
Absolutely. Well, if there's anything that I want, anybody watching this show to see, and even you, is that the impossibility of what I had to come out of, and then the one thing that I did that actually brought me out of it. And it's not an accident. Like, I didn't believe in Jesus. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in any of this. And I believed in everything else that I tried to do. None of that worked. And I mean, I fully committed belief. I only placed a mustard seed of faith in Jesus. And, I wrote a song called Mustard Seed just recently because of that very thing. And that little bit of faith I placed in that changed everything. And then following the teachings. And I like you said something the other day in a private conversation, and I want to address this too. You say people, they look at Jesus and he's got a bad name because of the church, because of the people. Well, Jesus, some of these Christian crusades and things like that, and some of the jokes they make about Catholic priests and these Catholic priests and what they did to little boys, that's not Jesus, and that's not what Jesus taught. Some of these things that have given Jesus a bad name, Jesus never said to do. A lot of people want to look at the church and judge the Savior. Well, there are going to be churches in this world that are designed by the enemy to make Jesus look bad. If I wanted to make you look bad, I would set you up to look bad, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think that when people look at Jesus and they want to judge him, they should go to the Bible and read what he said. He said, love your enemy, feed your enemy, bless your enemy, pray for your enemy. He never said, go hurt your enemy, kill your enemy, make everybody believe in me. As a matter of fact, he said just the opposite. He doesn't force himself on anyone. I'm not trying to force him on anyone either, but I do want people to see my story and the power that came from it. I would have never been here. I know what saved me, and I know the miracles that happened to get me here. And I know that I was taught not to be a victim anymore and to understand that my past has been a boot camp. And that if I can make it through that, I can make it through anything. And I shouldn't have had to make it through that to realize that. Because you don't have to go through all that to know you can make it through anything. Just do it. You don't have to go through that struggle to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But me, I'm a hardhead. Maybe I had to see it that way.
I think everybody, at the end of the day, for some reason, I don't know what it is, you can try to convince folks, you know, don't live through that struggle and do something different. And then sometimes folks just going to have to learn it
Yeah.
the hard way.
Yeah. Well, Charlie Kirk said it on a podcast one time, and I hope you members don't get hate because I mentioned him, man. He said there's two types of wisdom. There's the type of wisdom where you experience it, and the type of wisdom where you read it in the text. The easiest one's when you read it and learn from other people's mistakes and don't have to learn from your own. I've learned to learn from other people's mistakes now because my own hurt so much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I actually was right. I actually had a guest on, and we were talking about just reading books, right? You know, you can read a book, I don't know, anywhere from, depending on how thick it is, say from, you know, a couple of hours to maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, you know, maybe it takes you a month to get through it. But those people are pouring out, you know, and a lot of times decades
of
experience and wisdom that you're going to be able to absorb in a day, a week, a month.
Yeah.
And
it took them a lifetime.
It took them, right, a big part of their life to come up with, hey, this is what I did to get to where I'm at. So I guess if you had to recommend a book, I kind of have a pretty good idea what one it's going to be, but I'll let you say it.
No, you don't. You don't. The Bible's going to be without being said, but I do have a book. Best book I ever read outside of the Bible is called The Four Agreements.
The Four Agreements.
If you read that book was one of the books that was paramount.
Really?
Yeah. So there's four agreements.
These agreements with yourself?
Well, then there's four chapters, and they talk about the agreements. Be impeccable with your words. So being impeccable with your words means without sin. Impeccable means without sin. And what that chapter teaches you is that, let's just say there's a new person comes into our job, right? And you're my good job friend. And we see that person, we start gossiping, or I do anyway, and you kind of laugh it off. Later on, me and you get into it, and that person becomes friends with you, and now you're telling them what I said. Now, because I was loose with my lips, that person now knows I've talked about them, and now both of you are shooting at me. The things you put out in the world you think are safe might always come back to bite you. Be impeccable with your words. Don't make assumptions. Never make assumptions. Sometimes you think just because of the way somebody words something, you know what they mean. And sometimes maybe somebody has a tone, has nothing to do with you. Make assumptions about why somebody did something. They may be doing their best and you consider the worst. Always check and make sure you understand. Do your best. And what's the other one? I forget the other one. But it's one of the best books that I've read. And it's maybe 160 pages. I don't remember. I read it 2.5 years ago. I read it while I was waiting to go to Recovery Church one day. I'd walk to the bus stop. Actually, I just walked all the way there. It was like 7 miles from my house. And I was an hour and a half, 2 hours early. So I walked up and down Okeechobee just reading this book. And I couldn't stop. And when I got through that book, it was probably the best book I ever read outside of the Bible. Amazing book. And it's not a Christian book. It says in there, if you like the Bible, you like to go to church, do that too. Anything that lifts you up, do it. It's a really, really good book. If there's any book, and if you take those principles and you apply them to your life, it will change you.
Okay, so why don't we also cover, like you mentioned, Recovery Church? How do people find out more about that?
Okay, perfect. Now let's get to that. So Recovery Church, we have 100 churches nationwide. The website is recovery.church. The goal in Recovery Church is to put one in every city in America. And I would describe Recovery Church, it's the old school AA, where Jesus was involved in the rooms and the Bible was brought out. And it's more of a church setting. It's a bridge from the rooms to the church. So we support going to the rooms, but we believe that we should
What are the rooms?
Like the rooms of AA and NA. We believe that our people should go from Recovery Church to the rooms and bring those people to Recovery Church so that we can get them into regular church. So it's a bridge. They do music in the beginning. They go into worship. We have recovery crosses to denote various lengths of clean time. You know, AA has the chips. NA has the white key tags. I'll show you. Have you seen them?
Just in movies.
So this is a multiple years. It's old, but that's an NA key tag. It's black for multiple years of recovery. I don't have any other ones on here because there's too many of them. I used to say NA right here, but it's old. I should have been.
What's NA stand for?
Narcotics Anonymous.
Okay.
And then AA is Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, Recovery Church is it's anonymous too, but we get crosses, and they denote various lengths of clean time. We celebrate anniversaries once a month, and it's a really special venue, man. We also do conferences where we bring people to conferences. We educate the members to actually get up and speak and preach before audiences. So it's not like you're coming in for a 10-minute speech. Once you've been there for a while, we have a spirit of rotation. We like people to get up on the stage. We like the addicts to become the worship ministry, things of that nature. It's a church built by addicts for addicts. And Pastor Phil Dorvac is his name. He actually started the movement in Lake Worth. It was called Drunk Church, and it was actually started in a bar. And it got too big, so they moved it across the street. I don't remember the name of the bar. And then Pastor Junior St. Val, he's our national recovery coach. He came from Elevation Church, where Pastor Steve Furtick actually teaches. Now, Pastor Steve Furtick's a real famous preacher. A lot of people know him. He's online. But Pastor Junior is an amazing speaker. He's a good friend of mine. Anybody who's interested in trying to figure out how to become recovered and not have to raise your hand and say I'm an addict, I think Recovery Church is a good place to start. Changed my life. It really did. I started in the rooms, and the rooms led me to Recovery Church. The last rehab I went to led me to Recovery Church. That lady scholarshiped me $500,000, probably $750,000 scholarship. I stayed in her houses for 2 years. She took me to Recovery Church. It's an amazing place, man.
Okay, and how do people get a hold of you? Obviously, you're on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook. So you can reach me. Where are you going to post this?
Usually posted on LinkedIn, and it goes out to Spotify.
I am on LinkedIn.
Then Spotify puts it out to, I don't know, number of different platforms.
Yeah.
So the audio is going to go as well as the video.
You can look me up on Facebook under Chuck McConnell, or you can look me up under Chuck, letter N, Ivy McConnell. That's one of our pages. That's going to be our worship ministry page where we're creating our band page.
And your LinkedIn?
And my LinkedIn is Chuck McConnell, or Charles McConnell.
Charles McConnell.
Yeah,
okay.
Look me up under Charles McConnell. I'll be wearing a suit and a tie. It's my business page, so the company I'm developing is on there with me as well. I'm a business developer too, so yeah.
Okay, we didn't even get into that.
Yeah. Well, hey.
What's the what kind of business development do you?
So we work. I do the Minnesota market, and the pastor of the Recovery Church, Jeff, he's a friend of mine. He does the psychology care in the Texas market. I do wound care and psychology in the Minnesota market. And another guy from the Recovery Church, Rob, he's actually the guy who contracts the work out to us. We're subcontractors. And he also is worship ministry.
Do you travel much over there too?
Don't have to. I work from my computer at home.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have to go anywhere. I can go anywhere and work. I can travel all over the United States and take my job with me. Yeah, we develop businesses. I sit and make phone calls and
What kind of businesses do you develop?
So wound care, we do chronic wound care, like grafting and debridement. We go into senior facilities and we do surgical procedures right at the bedside. And then we do on-site psychology services for senior. I basically get the DONs, the directors of nursing, or the administrators on the phone and set up the meetings. And then we coordinate with them to see if we can get services brought into the facilities.
Okay.
It's a great job, man. It's helping people. That's what this is all about, man. Anything I can do to help people. And I even have my job in the medical industry helping people. Yeah.
That's just an amazing story. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
I appreciate you having me.
I hopefully, if it just reaches one person and they can reach out to the recovery.church and
Recovery.church
and get the help that they need. That would be an amazing
100%.
achievement.
So when they go on to recovery.church too, there's a locator map. You can go down and type your city in. It'll tell you the recovery church is closest to you. And we have a lot of resources too. And if somebody ever needs to go into rehab, we have free rehabs in all 50 states. I have a list places that people can go. I'm also
when they make that decision.
Yeah, I'm also someone that if you really are ready to go, I may not send you money. I'm not going to send you money. I may give you clothes if you get here. But if you're ready to go, I will find a rehab in your state. I will call and get you in. I will help you get started. If you really need that help, I will help you. But if you're ready to go, you can pick up the phone and make that decision. But I will help. I'm here. I want to see people win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. And I think Jesus has a calling on your life too, man. You may not see it yet, but it's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, he's wanting you to fully commit. Some things are going to change. I don't know, man. I've been feeling that all week.
Okay.
All week.
All right. That's good to hear.
All week. Yeah.
All right. So that's it. That's kind of how we do it. And I don't know. Do you have the?
So I'm gonna say this. I say this at the end of every one of my videos. I love you. God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay, you're saying this is the end. That just reminded me. One of the things you wanted to talk about was men being open to expressing love of each other.
Absolutely.
And supporting other men.
100%.
Like, can you touch on that just real? I mean, I'm sorry,
sure,
kind of like ended, but we're gonna dive into this.
Of course,
I have a little bit more time, so I don't mind.
No, that's all right. So there's a stigma that we grow up in, and men feel like it's they're weak if they tell another man they love him, or hey, let's lean on each other. When you got a problem, call me. Men chest up, chin up, chest out. Well, that's the easy way out for men. A man feels like that's how he has to be, and feels like that if he opens himself up and talks to people, then he's weak. Well, one of the hardest things for a man to do is to allow himself to be weak. So I would say it takes a stronger man to open himself up and be vulnerable and allow himself to be exposed to, the Bible says man sharpens man like iron sharpens iron. So the Bible doesn't call us not to lean on each other. As a matter of fact, it calls us to work together, pray for each other, and help each other. So that's where I'm at with that. Be vulnerable, be willing to help somebody, and be willing to.
I think it's society though as a whole.
Of course.
I like to connect you up with Ken Lehrman because he's really big into that too.
Absolutely.
He's a printer, so he prints whatever you need.
Sure.
I've used him for postcards, business cards,
okay,
what have you. And he always says, "I love you, man." And
love you, man.
And it's people get thrown off by that, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
And it's because of the stigma, I think, that you're talking about. Like,
yeah. I'm gonna make you uncomfortable. I don't care. I don't care, because if you listen, man, I'm gonna tell you something. It started when I came to rehab. I hadn't heard "I love you" from anybody in a long time, and there was this guy. He was the facilitator, and he looked at me. He said, "Listen, I love you. Ain't nothing you can do about it." And I started crying, man. So there's people out there who have not heard the words "I love you." And you never know when you're going to tell somebody that one day that, hey, I love you, or you're going to hug them, man, and they're going to be like,
right.
what's this guy doing? Yeah. And they're just going to grab you and break down,
Yeah. I guess the thing for me is, I guess I was really fortunate. I had a father that said that to me and hugged me.
Yeah, me too.
And looked me in the eyes.
Well, I had a mom that did. Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to imagine people that didn't have that in their life. Yeah. But I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah. Well, I like saying it to complete strangers.
I know, and I'll tell you why I know this, is I know that I've heard that from other family members.
Absolutely.
Where they've said, yeah, I never heard that from my father. Yeah. And so that's I don't know, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
because I had it in my life.
Yeah, me neither, man. I get it. My family's a big "I love you" family. People would think we were kissing cousins. Much they kiss on each other. We are from Arkansas. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, our
So
family.
you're a hillbilly.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Georgia. I was born in Chattahoochee, but I was raised in Arkansas and Dallas, Texas. Pretty much, I'm just Southern boy, man.
Yeah.
Southern boy, yeah. And now I'm even as far south as you can go now. So
Yeah.
just about.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that because we talked
Yeah,
about
man.
that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's been a pleasure having you and having
I
this
appreciate it,
discussion.
man.
And I hope it helps somebody out there. And we'll have all the links. And
I hope
all
I
that
didn't
stuff.
squirrel too much, man. I kind of got
No.
squirreled. So
No,
yeah,
we're
Yeah.
great.
Awesome, man.
That's what this is all about.
Good
So
stuff.
anyway,
Like it, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, 100%.